ladies and gentlemen who are here for the 12 o'clock tour. In about 5 minutes, I will be checking you in right underneath this briefing area sign. In the meantime, this is the perfect opportunity to use the restroom. The tour is 45 minutes long and there are no bathrooms along it, and it is capped on either side by 55 stairs. Now, I can tell you from personal experience that 55 stairs with a full bladder is not fun, so I would suggest using the restroom. Thank you.
So tomorrow, 11 a.m., us.
Oh, you guys come back tomorrow? Тяни очень.
Oh, neat. Look at the suits. Oh, neat. Miniature Blanchard Trophy awarded each year to the best strategic missile wing in the Air Force. Davis Monthon's 390th SMW won it in 1979. Here's another Air Force uniform. Oh, that's cool. Hang on. I missed this. Look. You have a time capsule. 2036. Oh, cool.
Okay, so it's not the right way. Okay. It should be in your email too. Did you have
The focal point of the battle for military superiority was nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. Both sides developed what became known as a nuclear triad, which is an integrated system of delivering these destructive payloads by air, sea, and land. This meant strategic bombers in the air, submarine-launched ballistic missiles from the sea, and land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles known as ICBMs. The Titan II ICBM that you will see here was part of a second generation of liquid-propelled missiles. The Titan II carried the W-53, a 9-megaton thermonuclear warhead equaling 9 million tons of TNT. For comparison, in World War II, the Allies dropped 3.4 million tons of bombs. Each W-53 had nearly 3 times that equivalent. These weapons are city busters, doomsday devices with world-ending destructive capability. There were 54 Titan II missile sites assigned to 3 active strategic missile wings. There was the 308th Wing near Little Rock, Arkansas, the 381st Wing near Wichita, Kansas, and the 390th Strategic Missile Wing here in southern Arizona. Each wing was made up of 18 silos. A wing was composed of 2 squadrons, each equipped with 9 missile silos. Assigned to the 390th were the 570th and 571st Strategic Missile Squadrons. This silo was assigned to the 571st Squadron. Each silo was in operation 24 hours a day, 365 days a year by a crew of 4, 2 officers and 2 enlisted personnel. Crews were assigned to their silos for 24-hour shifts called alerts. The Titan II missiles sitting in their hardened protected silos with their ability to launch in less than a minute were a credible threat of a retaliatory or second strike against a preemptive nuclear attack. This meant that an aggressor could not expect that a first strike would destroy all the opponent's nuclear strike capability. The aggressor would in return be devastated in a second strike. This is known as mutually assured destruction. If one side launches, then the other will respond, at least as forcefully, ensuring that both countries will be annihilated. This concept was also expressed as peace through deterrence. The theory is that since neither side could win a nuclear war, that neither side would start one. In 1982, the Air Force started deactivating the Titan II missile system as newer ICBM systems came online. The 390th was the first wing to be deactivated. 5 years later, in 1987, the last Titan IIs were deactivated, 24 years after the missile's initial development and deployment. The Cold War continued until 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved into its member states. In this sense, peace through deterrence was successful, without either side launching a nuclear strike. Before going on the tour, I'd like to cover a few safety items. First, watch your head, especially if you're over 6 feet tall or around 2 meters, because there are many low beams in the silo access tunnel. Secondly, watch your step, especially on the stairs. Keep your eye out for any desert critters inside and outside of the silo, especially around doors and curbs where they like to hide. If you see one, remain calm, don't touch, back away, and let a staff member know and we'll take care of it. Also, please listen to your tour guide and any instructions they have. Also, save any questions until they say that they're ready for them. And lastly, thank you for visiting this National Historic Landmark, which is a window into the past.
These beautiful walls. All throughout this section of the facility, we have 4 to 8 foot thick steel reinforced concrete walls. Now, when I say steel reinforced, I am talking about rebar. And the tensile can be that only about this up is 2¼ inches thick. These massive walls and massive doors, they work together to keep separate the softened section of the facility from the hardened section. Hardened section is what is meant to survive basically being forming attack. Now, biological and chemical warfare are easily blocked just because this entire section of the facility can be sealed airtight with 30 days of air, running enough time to launch a top-flight strike. Meanwhile, conventional and nuclear warfare tend to bounce off of these massive structures. With the massive thanks to my mention of nuclear warfare, the Air Force did not believe that this facility would survive a direct hit. They did think it would survive as a near miss from any missile from any nuclear warhead in the world. Now, near miss is anything outside of a mile. At the time, especially for our enemies, it was very hard to consistently hit ICBMs within a mile of their targets. So the thinking was, even in the event of a nuclear apocalypse, you actually had a pretty good chance at surviving inside one of these facilities. Now there's another safety feature that I love to talk about. I can't really see it from out here. That's what I'm going to show to you guys. It's inside the command center. So if you all will please follow me.
Look at this door. Look at the thickness of this door. Look at this. Wow. Come on. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. Oh, this is like in the movies, baby. Sorry. That's what it reminds me of. Oh, this is cool.
All right. So, welcome everybody into the command center. Now we do have this lovely blue bench here for you to take a seat if you want to. And then we also have these two very comfortable looking chairs. I do need a person in each one of these chairs because these are the volunteer positions. I need somebody to turn the keys. All right, we got one there. And we got one here. All right. There's two seats somewhere. Now, I'll get back to you two in a second, but first, I did mention another safety feature, so it's time for me to point it out to you guys. Now, you can see elements of it around this room in the form of those giant springs. In total, there are 8 of them around this room, and they're the only thing connecting this floor, so the floor above us and the floor below us, to the outside world. We're not connected to any floors, ceiling, or walls. We are just floating on those 8 giant springs. Now, what this does is it completely shock isolates this section of the facility. No matter what movement occurs in the earth outside of here, that energy gets absorbed by those springs to the point where even if it's an earthquake, we shouldn't see a ripple in our morning coffee. Now, this is not the only section of the facility with shock isolation. You may have noticed in that small hallway I just took you down that there were shock absorbers along the walls. What those are doing is shock isolating the cables that run down that very long hallway and connect this section of this facility to the missile and the silo. Those cables, of course, being very important. When we get into the silo, you're also going to see several components hanging from springs or shock absorbers for very much so the same reason. Now, I've talked a fair bit about our 4-man crew, especially our commander, and thankfully, we've got a couple of representatives for them sitting right here. Now, the person that I've been calling commander, their full title would actually be Missile Combat Crew Commander, and while they were on shift, they would usually be sat in this chair right here. Now, they are in charge of this facility, but that isn't really all it is cracked up to be, because everybody else who works here already knows what their job is and can do it very well. So essentially, what the commander is doing is paperwork, a lot of it. Now, some of that paperwork could be delegated to our deputy missile combat crew commander over here. However, our deputy commander's got a couple jobs of her own. First off, she's in charge of all communications, both within the facility and with the outside world. And secondly, she's charged with knowing where every single person in the facility is at all times. Now, for that latter job, she has this handy tool right here. That is a locator board. Essentially, it is a diagram of the entire facility. You okay? So, using that diagram, all that our deputy commander has to do is write on it with a wax pencil the name of the personnel in whatever room they're supposed to be in. Then when that personnel radios in and says, hey, we've moved from this room to this room, all the deputy commander has to do is erase the name from the first room, write it down in the next. Keeps it simple, no memory games involved. Now, these two are our officers. They're the only ones allowed to carry firearms down here, but they're only half of our 4-man crew, leaving us with 2 enlisted personnel. The first of these would be our BMAT, our Ballistic Missile Analyst Technician. Now, it's their job to make sure that the missile is ready to go at a moment's notice at any moment. Then we have our MFT, our Missile Facilities Technician. They're in charge of the rest of the facility, everything from the light bulbs on the computers to the massive silo door protecting the missile. They have to make sure that that's all running smoothly. Now, that's a general overview of their jobs, but what did their day-to-day actually look like? What was a 24-hour shift like down here? Well, the first thing that any crew would do after relieving the previous crew is sitting right here between our commanders. This massive book is a checklist. It goes over every single component in this facility. Every light bulb, switch, hydraulic line, it is all in there, and it all needs to be checked. For a good crew, this will take about 4 hours. They're doing this at the start of every single shift and 12 hours in to every single shift. So a full 8 hours of their workday is dedicated to that one book. Now, in addition to this, our crew members would have had 4 hours of essentially break time. They could go upstairs and use those facilities. We have a couple of bunk beds, a small kitchen, a small study. They could use those facilities however they like for those 4 hours, but the other 20, they needed to be down here working. Now, that has me talking about half of their workday, so what was the other 12 hours like? To be honest, it's not too dissimilar from what you guys were doing. There would have been some busy work, probably some reading, watching gauges, but all that they would be doing really is listening. Now, unlike you guys, they didn't have my beautiful voice to listen to. Instead, they were listening to these 2 speakers right here and those 2 speakers over there. These speakers connect directly via radio to Strategic Air Command over at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, those are our bosses, so we have to listen to every single word they have to say, which means these speakers are always on. even though they're very rarely receiving a signal, which means there's pretty much a constant stream of static inside of this room. Now, every once in a while, that static would be broken. It could be a short message, something that needed to be acknowledged by the crew, which would be done with the pushing of a button on the deputy commander's console. Maybe some longer messages would come through, some sort of action that needed to be completed by the crew. And very, very rarely, they would have heard a message that sounded like this. So, we all know what we're doing now, right? I don't expect you to. Thankfully, our commanders would have been highly trained. The second that first alarm went off, they would have grabbed these red binders that we have here, opened them up, and started writing down every single word or every single symbol that they heard. Now, once the message was done and they had finished writing, they would then trade binders to make sure that the other person wrote down the exact same thing. So, why do we need to have so much certainty in what was just said? And that's because that could have been one of two things. It could have been in order to complete a drill, or in order to launch the missile. We don't want those crossing over. So, we have to have certainty in it. Now, while I say what we heard were orders, to be more exact, they were instructions for how we get to our orders. Our orders are actually inside of that red filing cabinet right over there. Now, you may be able to notice there are 3 locks on that filing cabinet. Those 2 padlocks each would have belonged personally to one of our commanders, so they were very easily removed. However, that 3rd lock, the one that is actually inside the filing cabinet, they did not know the combination to until just now, because that was the first part of the message that we just heard. So, using that information, they would unlock that lock as well, pull open the drawer, and retrieve 2 very important pieces of equipment. The first of these would be our launch keys. Now, I got one right here inside the commander's console, and then there's another one over here in the side of the deputy commander's console. That shouldn't be sticking out that much. I'm gonna gouge my eye out. Now, that's not the only thing that would have been grabbed. The commander would have also grabbed one of these. Now, inside of that filing cabinet, there were hundreds of these little manila envelopes. Each one contains a different set of orders. Some of these orders would be for completing drills. Some would be for launching the missile. And a bunch of them would have been nothing but decoys with nothing but gibberish written on them. They were only there in case somebody broke in and somehow got into that filing cabinet. Now, we need to know exactly which one of these to grab, which is the reason for the different 2-digit codes in the top right corner of each of these envelopes. These 2 digits were the next 2 digits that came through on the message we just heard. I'm going to go ahead and say in our case, it was Delta Foxtrot. So, commander grabs out the envelope with Delta Foxtrot, cracks it open, and pulls out from inside of it a little red slip of paper with even more code on it. Now, this top bit of code right here, the stuff in bold, is the confirmation code. It is the last bit of the message that just came through on the speakers. It has to match perfectly because that's how we know we have the right set of orders in our hand. Once that is confirmed, it is time to move on to the next bit of information here. However, the only one who will be decoding this information is the commander. Now, the reason for that is because hidden in this information is confirmation of this being a drill or a legitimate launch. The Air Force wanted the only person in the room to know to be the commander. It was hoped everyone else would assume it was a legitimate launch every single time, and they would take every drill just as seriously. Now, that being said, the only difference between a drill and a legitimate launch is right before turning the keys, the commander will say, "Stop, this was a drill." Now, either way, we have 3 pieces of information on the slip of paper that need to be brought into reality in a variety of different ways. The first of these is a launch time. Now, I know that's a little counterintuitive. We are a reactionary facility. The only time we would be firing the missile is if somebody else had already fired on us. So you'd think we want our missile in the air as quickly as possible. What you have to remember, though, is we are not the only missile facility in the Tucson area. There are 18 of us in total. 18 missiles going up at relatively the same time in relatively the same place. That's a recipe for a mid-air collision, something that we definitely do not want to have happening. So Strategic Air Command would make sure to separate out the launch times of each facility to ensure that that wouldn't happen. Now, once the commander decoded that bit of information, he would read it off to our deputy commander, who would then make a mark on this clock right here at the correct time. thing of note about that clock, it is actually in Zulu time, also known as UTC. That was the case for most clocks under Strategic Air Command. It makes life simpler when you don't have to do any time conversions. Now, once that mark has been made, the commander would move on to the next piece of information, which has to do with these. On board our missile, we have 4 of these butterfly valves. Now, a bit of an oversimplification, but essentially what they do is they keep separate the oxidizer and the fuel. That is a very important job on board our missile because our missile operates off of a thermogolic reaction. What that means is the second the oxidizer and fuel touches, there is combustion and the missile goes off, whether or not there's a giant silo door in the way. So we want to make sure that those stay closed up until it's actually time to launch the missile. We added a few safety features onto it, but what matters to us here is we added an external lock. The only way to unlock that lock is by putting in the correct 6-digit code into this computer right here. Now, thankfully, that 6-digit code is on that little slip of paper because there's over 17 million possible combinations. Now, once the commander decodes that information, he would read it off to our BMAT, who would input it directly into that computer, push a button, and everything would be ready to go on that front, leaving us with the last and perhaps most vital piece of information. Where is our missile going? What is our target? Well, the Air Force left us a list of all targets available to the facility right here on the commander's console. We have target 1, target 2, and target 3. That is all that anybody who worked in these facilities knew them as. The only ones who knew the true identity of the targets were a few generals in the Pentagon. It was very top secret back then, it's still top secret today. All we have are educated guesses for the actual identities. Now, for what we do know, the default target for this facility was target 2. That little red slip of paper could have told us to switch over to target 1 or target 3. It was also that slip of paper that was telling us whether this is going to be a ground burst or air burst type explosion. Now all of that information gets put into this console here and that one over there, and then we're ready to wait. Specifically, we were waiting for the time on the clock to reach the indicated time that had been marked. At that point, the keys would be turned and the missile would be launched. Now, we don't have that constraint. We can turn the keys whenever we like. However, I want to go over the launch sequence before we do that because while I can talk fast, I still haven't quite managed to out-talk the missile. Now, the entire launch sequence is listed out on this series of lights right here to the right of the commander's key. This first light, the launch enabled light, is going to come on once the keys have been turned. That's telling us the butterfly valves have been unlocked and that the launch sequence has started. Pretty quickly after that, we're going to have the battery activated light come on. The reason for this light is because the batteries on board our missile were completely dry. They were just empty metal boxes. Obviously, that's not going to provide much power. So what they came up with was they hung bags of electrolytes above each battery. When the keys were turned, those bags would be pierced and the electrolytes forced into the batteries, charging them for their one and only use. Now, this is the longest part of the entire launch sequence. It will take 28 seconds out of the 58-second simulation we have set up here. Once it is done, then the next light will come on, the APS power light, which is just telling us the missile's on its own power. Now, pretty quickly after that light, we're going to have the silo soft light come on. That light is indicating a couple things. First off, the silo door has opened. When that happens, we are going to hear an alarm, but it is a good alarm to hear because it means everything is working properly. Simultaneously, the bottom of the missile is being filled with, the bottom of the silo is being filled with 10,000 gallons of water. The reason for that is because it was feared if the missile was fired out of a dry silo, it would create so much noise, those sound vibrations would bounce off the walls back into the missile, and the missile would shake itself to pieces and self-destruct. Now, with that water in there, that water gets converted into steam, and that steam creates enough of a buffer that that's not an issue. Now, almost immediately after that light comes on, we're also going to have the guidance go light come on. The reason for that is because all of the targeting information for our missile is actually stored in this bank of computers right here. That information needs to be sent to the missile and downloaded by it. And once the missile knows where it is and where it is going, that light will come on. At that point, we'll be waiting for about 15 to 20 seconds for the next light, which is the fire engine light. Now, this one's pretty self-explanatory. The engines are producing fire. They have started. That also means that there's now fire in the silo, which is going to set off a fire alarm. However, again, this is a good alarm to hear. Now, even though the engines have started, the missile doesn't immediately take off. It is held in place by 4 bolts until it reaches about 77% of its maximum thrust. At that point, the bolts are explosively removed and the missile is allowed to lift off, which just so happens to be the words on this last slide here, lift off. That light will come on at this point. Now, that is the entire launch sequence, so I'd say we're ready to turn some keys. Commanders, you know where your keys are. If you please stand up and put your hands on them. Commander. Now, on our commanders, 3, 2, 1, go. I want you both to turn your keys towards me. Commander, count down, please.
3, 2, 1, go.
And release.
There you go.
Now, at this point, the job's basically done. Commander would be watching this series of lights, making sure none of the lights immediately underneath them come on, because that means a very serious issue has occurred. But I've run the simulation hundreds of times. That's not going to be happening here. Now, at this point, there's no stopping the missile. There's no abort or self-destruct button. The missile is taking off. It is hitting its target unless some unforeseen circumstance occurs somewhere along the way, but we can't affect that at all. Now we're going to hear that silo door alarm. And almost immediately after that, guidance go light came on, so now we're just waiting for the engines to start and for that fire alarm to go off.
Batteries. Yeah, it's purging the batteries. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, once you turn the keys, that's it.
And lift off. Now, does it feel like we actually just launched a missile? No, not really. But the reality is, between those massive blast off doors and us being completely shock isolated on those springs, this is essentially how it would have felt and sounded to have launched the missile. The only indication the crew would have had would have been this series of lights right here. Now, that being said, I now have to reassure you guys that we didn't just launch a missile. So if you want to start heading down that very long hallway, you'll know you're in the right spot when you see the tube of metal inside the giant hole in the ground. Great job, commanders.
All the way down. Yes?
Y'all are.
Emergency shower. Emergency shower. Oh. Look at this. This is so neat. I've never been in a facility like this before. This is the coolest thing ever. Do you know how much fun I could have in this place? I'm not supposed to. We're going the right way, right? Yeah. Look at this place. This is so neat. I love it. I could like hang out underneath, like down there. Like down there, I could hang out. I could hang out back there. Sleep on a pole. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. They would get me out of here so fast. This is really neat. I like it. It's a lot of fun. So glad we came. Ooh, cool. Ta-da. Here we are. Okay, we're here. And I'm going to show you things.
That's it.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Look, guys. Look at how big this is. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, that's huge. Hang on, guys. Wow. Never seen one this close. Don't want to either.
So, welcome everybody into our silo. Now, feel free to spread out, take pictures, completely ignore every single word that I'm saying. That's fine as long as you don't fall down any shafts. Now, that being said, I will be talking from over here, but feel free to ignore me. You're only hurting my ego a little bit. Now, this silo is the only one of the 54 original that has been left completely intact. All 53 others received a rather explosive treatment when they were decommissioned. So, those other 53 silos were loaded up with over a ton of TNT that was then detonated, essentially turning them into giant craters that were then filled in with dirt. Obviously, ours has not received that treatment. It is completely intact. The reason for that is because we had some allies in the Air Force who recognized how important it was to keep one of these facilities around for museum purposes for our younger generations. Now, that being said, it wasn't as simple as just removing everything top secret classified from the facility and handing it over to us civilians. A couple more modifications needed to be made. First off was the missile itself. Now,
There's
this
this
was
guy.
not the original missile. That one had to be removed in accordance with several treaties we had with the Soviet Union, and it had to be decommissioned in full view of Soviet spy satellites.
Just can't see all the way down there, but I'm trying. Not easy. Huh? Look at this. It's even got a serial number on it. Wait, I gotta get the serial number. Oh, I see it. Serial number. There we go.
You know, my question is, why is this entire facility green?
Green? It's army green. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. It is minty green. I don't know why, honey. I have no idea.
Seafoam green, actually.
Yeah. This is really neat. I've never seen one of these before. It's fascinating to me.
It's crazy, huh?
It is. Yeah, that
It's just
too.
amazing no one ever, accidentally launched on it.
It's amazing to me that we can do this. Look at all
Right.
those little rivets.
Oh, I know.
Somebody did that. Wow. It
It's
just
just
blows.
this whole structure, 3 years to build this whole underground structure.
Yeah. The amount of cement and metal and my goodness. It's amazing. Oh, can I get that? There's an actual glass roof. There it is.
I still can't get over the fact that the other room was just held up by springs.
God, I know. Isn't that cool?
I feel like it.
It's so neat.
The fission material was,
It's neat.
I forget which variant of it, but the high power stuff.
Do not enter. I will not enter, I promise. It's none of my business. It's cleaning.
And it was a 3-stage, so you would have the uranium.
Oh, look, guys. Hang on. Hang on. I want to show you this. Look at the inner workings. Look at that. Wow. Gosh, that's neat.
Oh, look, you can see in the mirror at the bottom.
You can't see in the mirror at the bottom. Hang on. Hang on. Let's see if I can get that for you guys. There we go. There. That's all the way down to the bottom, guys.
That's handy from here because if they said something else, you could see the fire at the bottom.
Yeah, you could.
Even though you shouldn't be standing over here.
No, you probably should not be standing here at all. This is probably not a good thing for you to do. But oh, that's so neat. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tour of the Titan Missile Museum. We will be putting this video out very soon. Thank you everyone for watching. This was fascinating to me. Bye everyone.
Shelby, watch out.
Hi, welcome, sir. Did you have a tour ticket for today? For the top complex of the